Welcome to Spiritual Talk with Christy, Godwin, and Friends, an authentic podcast where we sit and discuss all things spiritual. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Spiritual Talk with Christy, Godwin, and Friends. I'm the resident psychic medium, Christy Godwin, and I am here with Iris Libby, my very good friend, a kick-butt psychic medium, and an even better astrologer. Thank you for being here today, Iris.
Hi, Christy. Thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
I'm so glad to have her here. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to get in touch with Iris, but just know it will also be on the verbiage of this. Whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on my podcast, just look in the verbiage and you'll have how to get to her. Her website is askirislibby.com. TikTok, Ask Iris Libby. Please follow her on TikTok. She has some great TikTok she puts out on when the best days are to do just about anything. Apply for a job, go on a first date, anything. Instagram, Ask Iris Libby. YouTube, Ask Iris Libby. And you can email her at, where is that, Iris?
info@askirislibby.com.
info@askirislibby.com. Now, a little bit about Iris. I met her, I don't know, I feel like we've known each other forever, but I guess I've known you about a year and a half.
Lifetimes. Many lifetimes.
Yeah, many lifetimes. That is so true. We had originally met via Zoom when we were becoming certified psychic mediums. And, you know, we both knew the other person had tremendous skill. But it was when we saw each other in person that it really clicked. Iris has been an astrologer since, I don't know, can I say? I don't want to give your age away.
84. Yeah.
84. I didn't want to age her, so I wasn't sure if I was allowed to say that. But since 84, she has really opened my mind to what can be seen in the skies. I had looked at astrology charts before. I'd had my charts read before. Nothing like the information that Iris can give you. And also what I love about her charts is not only that is she a phenomenal astrologer, her psychic and mediumship ability is off the charts. And I have to tell her that all the time because she completely underestimates her abilities. She is kick butt. I just have to tell y'all. So when combining the two, the amount of information she can give you is just phenomenal.
Just thank you.
It's true. It's true. How many times, Iris, have you heard me say, Iris, you underestimate your ability, your psychic ability?
That is true. That is true.
Yes. Yes. You have to know in our world that, you know, we have kind of a behind the scenes connection. Most people see psychic mediums on, you know, the social media platforms getting readings from them. But we also sometimes second guess ourselves because we're reading for ourselves. And so Iris is one of the people I will call when I need confirmation on something. And I so appreciate that in her. Now, Iris is here today. She is going to share a couple of charts. I'm using myself as a guinea pig just so people can understand and see the phenomenal information. So y'all get to know my birth date, my birth time, anything you ever wanted to know about Christy Godwin, you are about to see. Now, there are several different charts you can choose when you go to Iris's website. One of them is a natal chart, and that is a birth chart. Correct. Do you want to say a little bit about what a birth chart is?
What is the natal chart? And that says who you are as an individual. And also, I can show you how to deal with parts of your personality or why parts of your personality have come forward. The other is transits and progressions. And that is me telling you what's happening in the future. And that's where my psychic abilities come in a lot. Because not only do you look at relationships with transits in the sky and your progressions. Now, a progression is for every year you live, your chart progresses one day. So if you were born on January 1st, 2002, this year, 2002, the following year, we would look at January 2nd, 2003. So you look at a combination of the relationship of those planets, and then also relationship charts and psychic and mediumship charts.
Absolutely. So now, if anyone has ever heard me read, y'all will hear, and you ask me a psychic question, I always say, this is how the energy is now, but there is free will. So that's basically what Iris is talking about. She can talk about these are the energies coming into your chart. Now, it's up to you of kind of how you deal with those. Some of them can be controlled more than others. But it's just preparing for what is coming your way so you can be expecting it and kind of work with the energies and turn them to your greater good.
Exactly. So, for instance, say if Uranus was going into your second house of money, you might look at how you were creating money. Or if it was going into your sixth house of work, that would mean your career and your health would be changing. So I could help you look at, okay, what are my options and how can I use these aspects to my best advantage?
Absolutely. It's always best to be prepared. Now, what I also love about the way Iris does her business, because it's the way I do mine, is you'll get the truth from her. It's not going to be all rainbows and sunshine, because that's not the way life is. I give the truth because I want the truth. So Iris will give you the truth when you come to her and say, this is what's going on. But then she'll also turn around and say, this is how you can change it. This is how you can work with that energy to make it work it for your greater good.
And that's really good, Christy, because the energy always has to express itself.
Yes.
I look at astrology as driving at night with the lights on. It helps you see the road, so you can try to express it in a way that would be to your best advantage. And it works.
All right, so now you're going to share this. She's going to share a couple of charts. As she shares them, we will walk through them and describe them.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit first about the types of charts that you can use when you're looking at love relationships. And I'm not talking about a relationship when, like when you first see each other, that attraction that you have. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about longevity in a relationship. Christy, how long have you been married?
So the reason Iris is talking about the love relationships is because when I asked her to come on the podcast, I asked her, I said, I get so many questions about love and relationships. I've been married 36 years. I said, use my husband and I for guinea pigs whenever you do these charts. And then I'm going to ask her to come on again later, and she's going to use some celebrity charts and compare those, because those are just kind of fun. But I've been married 36 years. And I think sometimes people look at mine and my husband's relationship from the outside looking in, thinking, oh, they're married 36 years. They are so cute. It's been all rainbows and butterflies. And no relationship is like that.
Exactly.
So she's talking about some relationship charts and how you can use different charts to see just what are the hurdles going to be that you're going to overcome in your relationship, have to overcome. And then what are some of the benefits that you have in this relationship?
Exactly. Okay. So the first chart I'm going to show you, this is a composite chart. And what I've done is I've taken Christy's natal coordinates, and you need the time, date, and place that Christy was born, the exact time, date, and place, and her husband, CJ, or as all of you may know him, Ken Jackson. And what that does is it creates an entity together. So they become functioning as one, almost like another person. Okay. Then, and there are many different ways to look at relationship charts. I've just chosen two for today. This comparison is an overlay where Ken's chart is here, his natal chart, and Christy's natal chart is on the outside, or these red planets in here. And then this is Ken's coordinates. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both to show you how they both are correct. Okay. Now, when we're discussing compatibility, we're going to overlook initial attraction, because that never ensures compatibility. When you meet someone and you're into them, you can think they're everything. And of course, you can't have long-term compatibility unless you have that initial attraction. Okay. Or, there are arranged marriages that work, but typically those arranged marriages are done astrologically. So what we
Okay,
look
I want
at,
to repeat that for just a moment because I want everyone watching this on YouTube or listening to it on the podcast to remember that initial attraction does not guarantee a long-term relationship. Sometimes we are recognizing people from past lives, and so we have that instant attraction. Sometimes there is a physical attraction, but that does not mean a long-term relationship.
and often we confuse a physical attraction with meaning that this is going to be a long-term relationship. But really, what I look at are four different things. I look at the compatibility of your sun. And the sun is who you are as an individual. In this chart, the sun is this round circle right here. And I'm just going to go back a step. This looks like a piece of pie, this chart, okay? And each house, you can see they're numbered. Each piece of pie is called a house. And there's 12 houses in your chart, okay?
Okay, for everyone listening to this on the podcast who's not looking at this, there is, no matter what kind of chart you're looking at, a natal chart, a composite chart, the chart that she has up on the screen, they all are divided into 12 houses. There are different, according to what, how you learned astrology and there's different ways of describing them. Now, what system do you use for your house division?
I'm using the Placidus house system.
Okay.
Which is a way, there's whole sign, there's many, many different ways of looking at it. And the interesting thing is that they're all correct. They all are correct. And we come to it, even when I work with numerologists, we come to the same conclusion, but from different angles. So
yes.
it all works.
I want to also reiterate that because Iris does, of course, a killer astrologer. I do something called soul plans. I have another friend who does numerology, and I have never had any of our information contradict each other. All of the information just comes at each other at a different way, but none of it contradicts each other.
That's very true. I want to mention something else, that just because a house is empty does not mean it doesn't express itself. It means we would go to the ruler. So their ascendant, or how the world sees them, is Libra. And Libra is ruled by Venus. So we would look at Venus to see how it's expressed.
Okay, so now the information, just to reiterate, the information we're looking at on the chart right now, is this my information?
This chart right here is it's a composite chart. So basically it's a combined chart of you and CJ together. It's your energy together. You create one unit. Okay.
Okay.
Basically,
and so together, our sun is in the 6th house. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And so now
I want to talk about a couple of things first, and that is, you've got to look at a four-legged table, right? So when you're looking at a relationship, you can't just look at your attraction or your love for that person. You have to look, who are you as individuals? And that has to do with the sun, okay? And do you get along as individuals? Then you have to look at the emotional, right? Do you get along emotionally? Then you need to look at the intellectual. Do you get along intellectually? Can you have a conversation with that person? Are you the kind of person who has, say, your Mercury in Cancer, where you don't want to talk when you're upset, and your spouse has their Mercury in Aquarius, and all they want to do is talk to you? By the way, I have Mercury in Aquarius, and that's all I want to do is talk. So my point here is that, and then you have to look at Mars. It's like how, like Venus and Mars, I consider together, how you go about getting it. All right. So we're going to look at all of those things. All right. So
very
first,
good.
I want to talk about, together, Christy and Ken have Libra rising. And this is how the world sees them. What does that mean? That means that, and I know that this is true about you because I've seen pictures. It's like you appear socially like you are the embodiment of the ideal couple. whether it's conscious or not, but there's a style and grace that you two have that is harmony. Now, Libra is ruled by Venus, but this is more the idealized Venus. So you all look like and appear to be the idealized couple. Now, with that, let me just say that you would never argue in public, even if you were angry at each other. Is that true?
That is true.
You keep up that front, right? That we are the ideal couple. Okay.
Yeah.
So next we're going to look at
And I do want to bring some of the personality into this. Now, do we do that consciously? We don't. And I, now even thinking about it, I'm like, why haven't we ever argued in public? I don't really know why, because it's not some
combination that you two have together. It's like when you put the two of you together, like, why do you act a certain way with one daughter and differently with another and differently with your friend? You don't act the same with all three daughters because you become a unit. You don't act the same way with all your friends, right? We act differently with different people because we, you can look at this, any kind of relationship. We could look at a business relationship. We could look at, a parent child relationship. We could look at a sibling relationship. Here, we're looking at love.
Very good.
Okay. So first we're going to look at the sun, and the sun is the sixth house, and the sixth house rules work and health. Okay. So this is a challenging position for the sun because it's inherently a house of inequality. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of giving and taking in the relationship, and there's always going to be one partner that gives and the other partner that takes. And the challenge of this position is one of you at different times in your relationship may feel taken advantage of by the other. Also, your relationship seems to revolve around getting work done. Now, I'm not talking about, your business work. I'm talking about work around the house, work with kids, but together you happen to be very productive. So you and Ken are very productive together. You put a lot of energy together into the little things of getting things done, right?
Very
and
true.
You may need lots of activity together in your daily lives. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging. So the more things you do together, the better it is. And when something comes up in the relationship, you can take the initiative together to work it out to make improvements. Now, this sixth house is a packed house. And
I do, but I want to talk a little bit about what Iris just said, because I want to, again, give some, because what she just said, I don't know if anyone, if you listen to her words carefully, she just said some challenges to that position, plus some bonuses to the position of her son. And I want to say, yes, I've always laughed or teased about a relationship after we've been in it for a while. Our relationship is rarely 50-50. It's usually about 70-30. And one of us, but we take turns in the 70 position, and then it switches over. Also, we are very active, productive people, no matter what we are doing. So our house, there's always something going on around our house, putting together, organizing, working outside, cleaning it. There's always some kind of activity going around in our house. Rarely will you find my husband and I just sitting. We do take times where we'll sit on the deck together or watch a show together at night. We do take those quiet times, but not a lot.
But even when you guys are alone out on the deck, having your quiet time, having a glass of wine, you're reading.
Yes.
You are doing something together. And,
absolutely.
I want to say something else about relationships. If you have a relationship, these blue lines are easy aspects. If you only have blue lines in your relationship, it's not going to work. you need a little conflict to
Mhm.
keep it going. So you see, they have lots of conflict. They have the red lines. They have all of these are considered conjunctions. You see a little red line here. They've got,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
conjuncts. They've got it all in their chart, and that helps as long as you can make it through those times.
yes.
When your planets get hit, by the way, because then they could get hit by transits, right, in the sky, that you're able to sustain the relationship.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I am very, that's the reason I want to make sure, because when Iris, the first thing she said is we present very well in public. We always look like this perfect couple, which is true. And I don't want people to ever think that because we look that way on the outside, it's because relationships are always work.
They are. They are. And you all have put a lot of work in, because next I want to talk about, so I'm going to talk about a conjunction. A conjunction are two planets. Well, with the sun, you look within 10 degrees, okay? So here we have the sun, we have the planet Saturn and Venus, and they're all conjunct. And this is a hard aspect. It's like lighting a flame. So all of these planets are working together. So you can't just take the sun and say this. You have to look at the whole, because this is a package deal, okay? So first I'm going to talk about the sun conjunct Venus, okay? And with
Okay,
the
so now let's
sun,
break this down. She said Sun conjunct Venus. It means it's within how many degrees of it?
within 10 degrees for the sun. Other planets are less. With the sun and the moon, which are known as luminaries, it's 10 degrees.
Okay.
So we've got two at 9. Well, one's 9 degrees 42 minutes, the other's 9 degrees 12 minutes, and we have 5 degrees 54 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Venus conjunct the sun, and that is it's one of the strongest indicators of a love relationship between two people. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is, but it's a very strong indicator. Now, there's never just one indicator for something. There's got to be several different indicators, or the relationship's not going to work. And this is like pure love. It's just pure love. And the attraction indicated by this aspect is so powerful that it can bring people together who are ordinarily not compatible. But that's not the case with you and Ken. And if the relationship has a lot of conflicts in it, with not a lot of what I'm going to say, these trines and sextiles, the blue lines, then it can turn to hatred, because what's the flip side of love? It's
Right.
hatred.
Right.
However, in most cases, this creates a very good personal relationship. Okay. So now we've got Saturn sitting between the two of them. And Saturn is about hard work. It's about restriction. It's about how you work together. So Sun conjunct Saturn is a very powerful aspect in a composite chart. It indicates that you have come together to learn an important lesson. So your life with Ken is about a lesson. You know, Saturn is known as the Lord of Karma, okay? And the experience of your relationship may expose you to the truths about yourself or about Ken that both of you would rather not face. But the point is not to judge yourselves or each other, but to see clearly and with detachment, and then to make the necessary changes. There will be times in your relationship when you find it confining and limiting. And I just need to say that. And you may need this discipline, or Ken may need this discipline in order to face responsibilities. If you need this experience, your relationship will last a lifetime.
Yes.
But if it's too confining, it will probably not last long. And so Saturn rewards hard work. And I do feel that you and Ken have put a lot of hard work in. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. For a little bit of background on this, my husband was in the service for 28 years, lots of moving around, deployments. We had 3 children. So there were times like when he was deployed, of course, he was very restricted and had to put his nose to the grindstone. I was back home having to do the same. When they come home from those deployments, they come home very different people than what they left. So again, you have to make the conscious decision to put your nose to the grindstone and get through it. And when you move, it's the same kind of thing. It's a lot of upheaval whenever you move. Especially, I'm going to relate this back to the military. For the spouses and the children, they're finding a whole new support system. The husband, or the spouse, I should say, because some of the active duty people are wives, but they already have a built-in support system. They're going to work and they're socializing and they're doing that. So there has been a lot of give and take, a lot of hard work. And I know that Iris used the word restriction, and I don't want anyone to think that that is a bad thing. There are times in all relationships where there is a little bit of restriction to it. That's just the way it is. You cannot always come and go and do as you please. You're having to take other people into consideration. And that's just the way a successful relationship is going to work. And so, yes, lots of hard work we put into that.
And I want to talk about all that movement that Christy just talked about with the military and moving houses all the time. That's in the 4th house, that there's Mars here, which is action energy, meaning there was always a lot of movement at home. Okay, but I'll get to that shortly. Right now, I want to talk about Venus conjunct Saturn. And basically, it's about a big sense of responsibility. So Venus is love, and Saturn is hard work. It's the taskmaster of a universe. Capricorn rules Saturn, and if you think of a goat climbing up a hill step by step, so you've got love and this goat together, right?
It's true.
And sometimes when Saturn's busy working, right, it can repress that warm, self-expressive nature of Venus. So often you don't see a lot of public affection. Is that true, Christy?
True. We're not, what do they call PDAs? We're not big on PDAs, public displays of affection.
All right. And even so I've socialized with Ken and with Christy, and there's strong feelings between them, but somehow they always subordinate it to more practical matters, like where are we going for dinner? We've got to be there at a certain, it's really about getting things done.
Yeah.
And I want to say, nevertheless, the feeling is genuine, and Saturn's slowing effect may make the relationship steady and enduring. And I feel like that's the case with you and Ken.
Yes. Y'all will hear, let me explain that a little bit. If you know my husband through me, you know him as CJ, because when I first met him, we worked together. We were very young. He had a name tag that said CJ. I didn't even know he had another name for about 6 months. And by then, I've always called him CJ. And so if people know him through me, they call him CJ. And I do want to say, Iris is so accurate. We don't do a lot of public displays of affection. We are, and I don't, this isn't bad, but sometimes we can be a little bit business oriented when it comes to that, because we are people that take responsibility serious. Where are we going for dinner? What time do we have to be there? That means we have to leave at this time, blah, 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 blah.
What's going on? You guys really, you take your responsibilities very seriously, and you feel that there's a lot of love in your relationship together.
Yes, absolutely. And, for all of that, we are very supportive of each other and very supportive of each other. Now, I will tell you, if in those quiet moments, and Iris has seen this happen before, but I will, just the other day, my daughter had some kids here. Kids that were grown adults are in their 20s, but they're kids to me. But I didn't realize it. They were all downstairs. My husband and I are upstairs in the kitchen, and we started dancing. And Iris has seen us just randomly start dancing when a song comes on.
Yeah.
And so apparently one of her friends had come upstairs to get something out of our kitchen, and she had quietly sneaked back downstairs because she was so shocked to see randomly come upon us dancing in our kitchen.
And actually, that happens often where a song will come on and you two will just start dancing. Like with no context, with nothing. You'll drop what you're doing and you start dancing together.
Yes, which is what happened at Iris's house one day. And to us, it was no big deal. That was a sure sign of how comfortable we are in that environment. That this song came on, and instantly I was in the kitchen chopping something. I dropped it because it was one of the songs that we danced to.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you why that is right now. So
Very
your
good.
sun is opposing. This is your composite sun is opposite, which is another hard aspect, your ascendant, which is Venus, and it's Libra, and it's about love. Okay. And basically, that means that you two work together as a team facing the world. Like, it's an excellent placement for an intimate relationship such as a marriage, because you function as a partnership. Now, when you guys start dancing together, it's not like you even say anything to each other. It's like you just come together. I think CJ was sitting in a chair and you just came together, you know? And so people sometimes feel like, where's Ken? Or where's Christy, when the two of you aren't together because you function so well together?
Yes, we do.
Now I'm going to show you a nice aspect. And this is your sun right here. And it's trining, which is 120 degrees, your moon. And your moon is your emotion. So this is who you are as individuals together. And these are your emotions together. And
now, a trine tends to be an easier aspect, correct?
Yes, it's something that it's just easy, right? Mm-hmm. We've been talking about a lot of hard aspects, but again, you need a mix of both for a relationship to work. Okay, so the trine of the sun and the moon is like, it's an indication of compatibility. It makes for true love and friendship too, which is important because emotionally you feel like you can accept the other person for who they are. And that's very important. And the principal representation by the sun and the moon together is wholeness. So together, you're a whole unit. Mm-hmm. And when you have the trine of, they're known as the luminaries, of these two luminaries, it means that as a couple, you are compatible of the same wholeness, which is really, really important. And this means that, it's a good relationship. But
I do want to say,
you can't look at something.
Right. I was going to say, whenever Iris is talking about the accepting of other people as who they are, you have to imagine we've been married 36 years. We both got married very young. We've become different people. Some of the time of accepting each other was not easy.
No. And there are reasons why. And it goes back to your sun conjunct your Saturn, or your Saturn conjunct your Venus. Because it means that, it's hard to be restricted in a relationship. And there were restrictions that could not be avoided, or things that happen that you have to make it through. You all have a lot of hard aspects and a lot of good aspects, which I feel is a good combination. One, to have a successful marriage, and two, to grow within the marriage, and three, for longevity, right? Because remember, there's a karmic reason that you and Ken came together. It feels so strange calling him Ken, by the way.
Call him CJ, he won't mind.
All right, so now I'm going to talk about Jupiter. You've got your sun trining Jupiter. And Jupiter is about abundance. It's good luck. Sometimes it could be too much of a good thing, like excessive, But in this case, what we're looking at, it gives your relationship a good start. And it means that when you started to date each other, there was a positive experience for both of you. And you'll feel that you really need each other in this lifetime when you got together. I don't know if you felt that way. Did you?
Um, yes, I think it came to him. Now we were at Iris's house and someone asked, I think it's just her friend, this is a question he just asks people. And it was, how did he put that? It was Rich. He
I
asked
don't
how,
remember. What did we ask?
when we knew the other person was the right person.
Oh,
And
okay.
have you heard him ask people that before?
Yes, he's asked people that before. Yeah.
Yes. And so my husband said, it was basically instantaneous.
Okay. And
Like,
the Jupiter aspect.
yes.
And also, you'll find with that aspect, together, you're able to express yourself more effectively to the world than you can as individuals. So you really need that partnership. And
Mhm.
your understandings of each other will constantly broaden, giving you wisdom and openness to deal with any challenges that arise in the relationship. Now, there have been challenges, but you all have been able to deal with it. Also, you both have a sense of optimism and the feeling that together you can handle anything the world throws at you. And I
Yeah.
believe you can.
Mhm.
Also, with this aspect, it's likely that you'll travel together, which you have.
Yeah.
But even if you're not traveling, you'll certainly go places together in your mind, exploring new ideas, new concepts, new dimensions. So with Jupiter and the sun, you've got this great growth aspect. And you've seen that, right, in your life.
I do. Now, that's something I think would be beneficial just for people. Yes, I can look back because we married 36 years and validate a ton of what Iris is saying. I think about this, how helpful it would have been in the beginning of our relationship to know what our strengths and challenges were going to be. So when we were experiencing those challenges, I could then say, oh, yes, this is a challenge and this is how I have to get through it, instead of just acting out in anger or resentment or something like that. It would have been very nice to know up front what we were facing and
And
what we
I
were going through.
And I often do that when like a couple comes to me when they're thinking about getting married. It's always good before you get married.
Yes.
And once the date is set, years ago, a couple they were a client of mine. They had gotten engaged to be married, and it was an awful chart comparison. Like they didn't have a lot of good things, and their major issue was communication. They just didn't know how to talk to each other, and emotionally, they weren't supportive. And I really knew that they had come together for a karmic reason, but that they would be divorced within 10 years, and 9.5 years later, they were divorced. But at that point, once the wedding is planned and the hotel is booked, I'm not going to tell you not to go ahead with it. Like,
Right.
yeah,
But you're going to be honest and say, look, I need to work on your communication. You might want to make sure that you get a therapist to help you out with communication. Is that the way you're going to
that's
go with it?
exactly. I said, this is the
Mhm.
way she likes to communicate. This is the way you like to communicate. You're going to have to work on help, like communicating their way when they need you. Right. And the
Mhm.
same
Yes.
thing of emotions. This is how they feel emotionally. This is how you like to. It's more about support with emotions. How do like, what do you need emotionally?
Mhm.
And they were just on different planets. And so, and they also, interestingly enough, had Libra rising.
Mhm.
They looked like Barbie and Ken, like the ideal couple. So anyway, yes, it's good to come before you get to that point. Okay.
Yes, it would have been so nice to know some of this stuff. I had just so we would know, um, how to approach each other, what we were going through, and there is a reason behind some of those challenges we went through.
Exactly, exactly. So next, I want to talk about Venus in the sixth house, which is also a very hard place because Venus is about love, okay? And this house is the house of work and health. And so within this relationship, your concern for love and affection is subordinate to what you consider important. And what you all consider important is your work and your health, right? And the health of your family. So it's not like there's a lack of affection. It simply means that love is not the highest priority, or showing affection isn't the highest priority. There's a sense of duty and obligation that you all have to your family.
Oh, yes. And now I want to talk about that for a second, Iris. Can you imagine? Because that is absolutely the way I feel. If I was married to someone who did not have the same, it would be hard on them because they would always think I was putting them behind my obligation to the family.
Right. And you can't do that. But basically, you're in service to each other in other ways besides romance. Okay. And no personal relationship can survive for purely practical motives. So there is love there. And you do allow, because of other aspects, your lighter, self-expressive feelings to come about. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We like work and we like play.
Yes. Now, I would love to go on and on about this chart, but I want to show you how another chart works.
Absolutely.
Because they both have merit, which is really interesting.
Okay, so now those that are listening to this on the podcast, Iris just changed the chart to what's called a composite chart with one overlay.
This is an overlay chart.
An overlay chart.
Okay, so Ken's chart is here. So Ken has Leo rising, and Christy's chart are all the glyphs in red. And what we do is we look at the relationship of these planets with one another, okay? And it's done by orbs. How many degrees apart is the orb? The closer the orb, so if the orb is 0 degrees, bingo, that's going to express itself. So the first, like when I ran this chart, when I first met Christy, the first thing I said is, oh my God, Christy's sun, who she is as an individual, is conjunct, lighting a match, Ken's Venus. So Christy's sun is in red, Ken's Venus is in blue. Okay. And what does that mean? That means there's a strong mutual attraction and appreciation. And Christy enjoys Ken's company and has a great time when she's with Ken. And of course, Ken enjoys Christy's company, and actually, it's what made him attracted to her. We feel this energetically. When the moon is full, the blood in our body rises, the sea goes up. We feel these outer planets too, but just not as strongly. This also means that they enjoy similar aesthetic and cultural interests. They have the same kind of morals and goals. And there's probably a strong intuitive bond between them, which helps them counteract any tense contact between other planets, because there is tense contact.
Now, really? I never would have guessed. I'm saying that very sarcastically, everyone.
That's the next one I wanted to talk about. But, and that's why Ken approached Christy, because of this conjunction. Okay?
And he did. We worked together, and he very much was very adamant in his approach of me.
So let's talk about a hard aspect now. Okay. So Christy's sun opposes Ken's Uranus. So who Christy is as an individual opposes Uranus, it rules sudden change or something that happens suddenly or something that drops out of the sky. It's like unpredictable. And this orb is 0 degrees 54 minutes. So it's a very tight orb. And this brings about a battle of the wills because Ken has a very independent nature, which stimulates Christy's tendency to control the situation. Now, Christy's running the household, right? So she needs to control a lot of situations. And likewise, Christy's tendencies to be the one who makes the decisions stimulates Ken's inclination to push back and say, hey, wait a minute. But Christy will say, well, you weren't here. I had to decide. Is that true?
That is exactly the way many discussions in our house have gone.
Yes, yes. And so, this is about freedom. Uranus rules freedom. And when you run a household, there's certain things that have to get done. And sometimes the person who is working outside of the household, because working in the household is also work,
right,
doesn't realize, hey, I've got to do something here. So the best way to resolve this kind of conflict is to respect each other's rights, okay? And so my suggestion here would be that Christy gives Ken plenty of space and tries to avoid restricting him, while I suggest Ken tries not to be so defiant just for the sake of showing his courage or showing who he is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I can't tell you that Iris, she is so spot on with that. And again, I'm going to take it back to the military, him being deployed. Anyone that's been in a military family knows, lots of decisions has to be made while they're gone. Well, you know what? When they're in the middle of a battlefield, you can't really call them and ask their opinion on the new tires or the new refrigerator or whatever has to be taken care of. And so then, he would come back and really try to not voice his opinions. But, when you're young, which we were, it's not as easy to see what's going on. As of course we got older and into our marriage, it was easier to see the pattern. But it would have been so nice to know this up front.
Yeah.
I
want to say that Ken expresses this impulsively, so he doesn't really think about it. And he will unnecessarily test your tolerance with the possible result of triggering a power struggle. Does that make sense? Because
absolutely,
you've had to make decisions. And as you said, as you both mature and you do have other favorable aspects, it can become very dynamic and fascinating because Uranian energy is beneficial to having a lively exchange, right? Like you've gotten Ken into esoteric interests that rules, that is very Uranian, something that is out of his comfort zone. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And and she's right. And he will find it fascinating. He hasn't delved completely into it, but doesn't mean he finds it fascinating, like she said. So to stimulate his brain, yes.
So I think, do we have time for one more aspect here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, or two more or one?
I think we can do two more.
Okay. So, Christy, your sun trines Ken's Neptune. Okay.
Now, just for remembrance, trine is a good aspect. It's an easy aspect.
Right. And that orb is 4 degrees, 31 minutes. Now, remember, it's the sun, and we look at 10 degrees with the sun. And Christy, when you first met Ken, you probably felt that you found the partner of your dreams, that you love Ken's, like he has a sensitivity and his way of being, and it kind of, who he was fascinated you. And then you illuminated Ken's fantasies, basically. And also, this gave you a very good spiritual connection you two, like a lot of people get together, they're atheists, or one is in one religion, one is another. You work together to have a very spiritual foundation. There's also a very subtle and soft harmony between the two of you that you see when you dance, right? It's pleasurable and peaceful. And there's also a strong psychic link between you. Ken's imagination and intuition complements Christy's creativity, self-expression, and intuition. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, Iris is using words like intuition, which I am very well aware of. My husband is not so much aware of his intuition, but I will tell him all the time, you can tell when he says something intuitive, and we are very complimentary of each other. Now, did we see it that way when we first met, when I was 17? I think, well, we got married, I was 17. I believe I was 16 when we actually met. Of course, we didn't put those words on it, but what Iris is saying, I can look back and see, yes, that is the way it felt. Absolutely.
That time when you first met, it was the blush of attraction. Because when we're attracted to someone, and we want intimacy, it's about that. We really don't see anything else.
Right. You don't see the depth of what it can become.
Yeah. You don't see like, can I communicate with them? You don't care at that point.
Right. I can imagine when I first met him, before I was even considering dating him, someone said, yes, this is who you're going to marry. And 36 years later, you're still going to be together. I've been like, what?
So the next aspect is a hard aspect. So it's Christy's sun opposing Ken's Pluto. And Pluto is, so the sun is who you are as an individual, and Pluto is about death and rebirth, not physical, but better said, transformation. So Christy, right here, has transformed Ken's life from what he ever, did I lose that? From what he thought it was going to be. So this can provoke, and by the way, this orb is 0 degrees, 40 minutes. And
I will tell you right now, that has been both fabulous and hard all at the same time.
Because it provokes a strong clash of wills.
It does.
Okay. You don't like the pressure that sometimes he puts on you, like you've got to move tomorrow.
Right.
And nor you don't sympathize with what you see as Ken's need for analysis and self-examination. And so like you are about, how can I say this? That what will happen in this situation is you're on a mission, but you've got to transform your mission all the time. And so there's this seesaw effect, and it goes back to what we talked about, that someone's always on top in the relationship because your composite chart has your sun in the 6th house. So here we see that same aspect again. It's a power struggle, a seesaw, where someone's always on top.
And I will say that is absolutely true. And, in those times, in the beginning, it was an issue. Now my husband and I really use that time to support the other. Like it's really this give and take and back and forth. And so you'll hear older couples when they've been married for a long time say the adage, a marriage is hardly ever 50-50. It's always a 60-40, 70-30, and it's a give and take. It's always this give and take. And to be able to recognize that and to be able to support when it's your time to support and then get supported when it's your time to be supported, I think is just instrumental in making a relationship last.
I want to talk about one more good aspect, which we saw also in the other chart comparison. So it's Christy's moon opposed CJ's sun. Okay, CJ's sun is right here, Christy's moon is right there. And basically, it just says you two have great chemistry. And any issues of incompatibility, you are able to smooth out. And it's almost as if you act like this magnetic field between two poles that produce this strong attraction. And you feel at ease with each other. You're drawn to each other. You enjoy each other's company. You're a good match in terms of complementing and stimulating each other, which is important once the kids have grown.
Right.
Now, I will say at times Ken can be insensitive to your feelings or attempt to dominate you. And you can be annoyed by some of his overbearing behavior. Like insisting on driving you everywhere. But the bottom line is there is a very strong bond between you, and you have this goodwill and mutual consideration that basically complement each other.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And I have really experienced whenever it was so funny when Iris said that we always present, and we present well. People see us together and it's like, oh, there's that perfect couple. Well, no, you have to work at it. And I don't want anyone to think no, relationships don't require work. But it would have been so nice in the beginning to have known some of our innate strengths and weaknesses so that we could recognize when a weakness or a challenge was coming, a hard aspect was coming, so that we could have been prepared and really delved into what our strengths were. So I think that this would be beneficial for anyone really delving into a long-term relationship. I know a lot of people aren't choosing to be married, but just any kind of long-term relationship so that you can understand the other person better.
And I want to say, even like you can look at business relationships this way. If you
Yes.
are living with someone or have a relationship with someone, you have a chart together because it's like you put yourself up in a blender, mixed each other up, and you become one unit, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know it's funny, I think it was just the other day, Iris and I were talking, and I am a Pisces, and was saying, usually Pisces bother me because they can be so indecisive. But then she said, what was it that is in my chart?
Well, I said most Pisces, like I hate to say this, but they're actually my least favorite sign because they're so indecisive. Pisces are swimming upstream and downstream at the same time, unless they have an Aquarius Mercury, which I'm an Aquarius, I have an Aquarius Mercury, which Christy happens to have. So from a communication aspect, Christy and I are like so in sync. And then also her moon's in late degrees Libra, my moon is in late degrees Sag, and they sextile each other, which is just what it sounds like. It means it's easy. So emotionally, we get along, and we are different. I'm kind of quirky. And but intellectually and from an emotional aspect, we really know how to support each other.
Yes.
And communicate.
And absolutely. And that's the reason I brought that up, because it doesn't matter any kind of relationship, a friend relationship, a business relationship. You want to make sure, because communication is really key in my experience to making any kind of relationship work. And so if you can understand how to communicate with that person or where they're coming from, it's just huge in making any kind of relationship work. Thank you, Iris, for being here today. Now, I'm sure all of my viewers have the complete ins and outs of my husband's and I's relationship. I don't even know if he knows I was doing this. I'll have to tell him before it drops.
There are some more that I haven't gone through. There's a lot more. Like I did, we can look at every single planet, but that just gives you a taste of, what to look at in a relationship. And Christy, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to try to talk Iris into coming back and doing a couple of celebrity because those are just kind of fun. I wanted to do mine first just because I have been seeing in my life coaching and in my personal practice just a lot of challenges in relationships lately. And I just want to give people some tools that they might can use to help them communicate with their partner. But so Iris, would you be willing to come back and do some celebrities for us?
Who do you want me to do?
Well, I'm thinking of one that has been just really in our face here recently, and one may or may not be a football player.
Oh, really? And who's that?
Giselle and her husband.
Ooh, and Tom Brady?
Yes.
I think that would be fun. Let's do
Wouldn't
it.
that be fun? And I'm not doing this to call them on the carpet. I'm doing it because my heart is really in helping people in their life and in relationships. So how, you have to look at how did this couple who just, and you can tell they have a tremendous love for each other, just tapping into them intuitively. They have a tremendous love for each other.
Yeah.
And I say all the time when people come to me, it's not a lack of love that usually causes a relationship to fail.
Well, when they first started to break up, and we can talk about this on that podcast, but I think Uranus, which is sudden change, was going over Giselle's Venus. And it means that she wanted different things when it came to love. And that's what they talked about in the press, that she didn't want Tom to start playing football again. She wanted more love and support at home. So we can talk.
Right. And it doesn't mean he didn't love her. It just meant that he was not being expressed in a way that she wanted it expressed.
Right. Exactly. That's it. And in different times of our lives, we express it differently. I'm sure you and Ken have gone through that, especially with him in service, to our country. I mean, there's been times when, you probably would have wanted him.
There was lots of times where I wanted that physical support, and it was just not to be found, not because he didn't want to give it to me, just because he was in a different country and not around. And yes, and I've seen it be the downfall of a lot of military relationships because I am home needing that support, dealing with the children, doing all the things. And emotionally, sometimes they came as support emotionally because emotionally, I mean, they're in a very precarious situation themselves. So that's where their attention is.
And I will say the reason why you were able to keep the fort going at home is because natally you have Venus, love, conjunct Saturn. So for you, love is not only the expression of romance, but it's responsibility.
Yes.
So you had a responsibility to your family, and you were not going to let your family down come hell or high water.
Nope. And that, sorry, I have a cold today. That is something that is talked about a lot in my house and CJ has said, my husband has said before, that sometimes I set a pretty quick clip and you have to keep up. Right. But it's true because it's responsibility. And sometimes you just have to put yourself aside, or that's the way I face it. I'm not saying everyone is like that. Sometimes I felt like I just needed to put myself aside for a moment and do what I needed to do for my family. And when I was done with my family, then I could, incorporate. And it never bothered me. Some people can get resentful of that. It never caused me to get resentful ever.
Because you have it in your chart natally. So you came into this lifetime understanding that there is a responsibility to love. Not everyone has that.
Yes, and she's absolutely right. It never has bothered me. I never felt restricted or too much responsibility. Did I feel stressed? Of course, there's a difference, but I never felt like it was too much.
Yeah, because a lot of times it was like being a single mom because you couldn't reach it.
Right. And yes, she's right, because sometimes now it's a little bit different. I remember the first time he deployed, we had to do snail mail and there was not any internet. Now one of the last times he deployed before he retired, he could actually FaceTime me, or I know it was Skype at the time. He could actually Skype me. I was like, what kind of deployment is this? I actually get to see his face. That was very different. Now, real quick before we go, you have a natal chart pulled up?
Oh, I can get that for you. Give me one moment.
Because I have so many questions about when did I know I was a psychic medium? Is it in my natal chart, Iris?
is in your natal chart. Hold on a minute.
Now, a
Um,
natal chart is who I came into this earth. What innate qualities was I born with? She just
it,
mentioned one. Love was responsibility, like family was a responsibility. Couldn't come hell or high water. I was not going to fault on that responsibility.
so Christy's natal chart is a snapshot of the time, date, and place she was born. So hold on, let me just pull that up for you because
Iris is so funny. Like you will be talking to her just, on the phone or whatever. Hold on, let me pull up your chart.
So, I'm going to say that you came in with a lot of psychic ability into this lifetime. And one of the main indicators here is you have Mars, which is your action energy, conjunct, again, lighting a match, Neptune. And it's in your 12th house. So you see what's hidden. You see behind the 12th house, it is what is hidden, and you see what's hidden. Another thing is that the 8th house rules the occult. Well, it also rules mortgage money. It rules intimacy. It rules it 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 rules a lot of other things. It rules inheritance, and your vertex is there. So it really just happened for you. This
Mhm,
whole
mhm.
ability, your psychic ability, you always had it, and you probably knew that you always had it. Also, your Mercury, this is a hard aspect. It's a square to your Neptune and Mars, but you probably avoided it for a while, I would say, those
I did.
messages from spirit.
Mhm.
And then I can look back and tell you when it knocked on your door and said, okay, this is, you got to do it now.
Absolutely. She's absolutely correct. I can tell you times when I was growing up where I kind of knew information was coming from me that was not of me, but I also avoided it just because the circles I traveled in, it wasn't societally accepted. And I felt weird and not natural and like there was something wrong with me. And who knew that if I had just been able to step into that ability, it made it so much easier.
I want to bring one more thing up, and that is your Pluto. So Pluto, remember, is transformation. The
Mhm.
ninth house is the house of spirit. Okay. And so Christy has Pluto in the ninth house of spirit. It also rules other areas, but your connection with spirit has always been transformational. Not only that, but it's the focal point of your finger of God or Yod. So
Mhm.
God writing the Ten Commandments for Moses is known as the finger of God. So it's an action that is out of the ordinary. Less than 1% of the population has this finger of God. And I remember when I first looked at your chart, I'm like, oh my God. And it means that you will have big challenges in your lifetime where it, like, if any of these planets, so if your Pluto, your Mercury, your Venus, or your Saturn are hit by transit of another planet, it sets off this yacht. So it sets off communication, spirit, and education, higher education. You were a college teacher for a long time,
Mhm. Yeah.
and love and family. It sets it off. So
Yeah.
typically, people who have yads have had very hard lives, or there's something in their life that has been very difficult.
Yeah.
So in your case, it had to do with those three areas.
Yep, she's absolutely right, which would be a whole nother podcast. But I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted people to understand some of the things they can get not only from your relationship charts, but also just in their natal chart.
It
Thank
will.
you so much for being here, Iris. I appreciate it so much.
You're so welcome. And thank you again for inviting me to be on your podcast. It was my pleasure.
Now, if anyone, I just want to let y'all know that when Iris was talking about the relationship charts, that she was just touching on a little bit of it. There is so much more information that can be gained. And it would have been so helpful in the beginning of my relationship to just look at some of the things that were coming our way and be able to handle them more. On a natal chart, like some of the things she has says, yes. And it would have been so much more helpful to know some of these before I actually hit them so I can know they were coming, because sometimes we feel blindsided in life. Now, her contact information will be in the verbiage, whether you're looking this on YouTube or on my podcast. But again, her website is askirislibby.com, and her offerings are on there. And that's where you can make any kind of appointment. I highly suggest it. Thank you, Iris.
Thank you, and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for listening today. Y'all have a wonderful week.